would it be a Willard and Dibs show if I didn't take up for Brock Purdy at least once? Let me say something that I really got to get off the chest.
Well,
let me just get it off.
Go ahead, and there are open phone lines in case what he's about to say infuriates you like it does me.
It's not going to infuriate you because, quite frankly, it's obvious. Brock Purdy had a bad game. I'm not here to say anything otherwise. He didn't play well yesterday.
Let's cut that.
He threw a pick. He threw behind receivers. He took grounding penalties. He also went on the drive that he needed to go on at the end of the game, and I think that's very important with the way people are talking about Purdy today. Like, if he doesn't at least get, like, Moody takes the hit on that last drive, not Brock. If Brock doesn't get him in field goal range, this is a very different day as far as Purdy is concerned.
He threw a couple of good balls in that drive.
Yeah.
The one to Jawan Jennings was great.
Very good ball.
The one to Ayuk was pretty much a garden variety pitch and catch in Cleveland. What the hell are you doing?
I don't know. Yeah, on the tackling.
Did you think that Ayuk had COVID? Because, and I'm not joking around about the vid, but they avoided him.
They did.
The old expression, they avoided him like the plague.
It was really odd. Like, it was an odd look.
Grant Delpit rolls up and, like, slaps him on the hip. It's like, dude, this is the biggest play in the game. Yeah. Tackle him.
You might want to take him down. But I was thrilled at the time that they let him right through and he got him into high field goal range. Here's just what I want to say real quick. And I knew this was coming, and I've seen a number of examples of it. The most recent, our good friend Chris Broussard was on there also kind of taking up for Brock Purdy in the FS1 show that has Nick Wrong on it.
Yeah.
So, you know how those shows put a little question on the board and then everybody yells at each other?
Yeah.
You want to know what the question on the board was?
Tell me.
Ready?
Sure.
Okay. Was Brock Purdy exposed?
Ooh, boy.
All right.
Exposed.
This won't take long.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Fraud Purdy.
We've spent the better part now of 2 seasons, 1 playoffs and an off season, watching Brock Purdy play, and it's like win, 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 win. All of these things get piled up. And what people would call up and say is, I need to see more. It's a pretty small sample with Brock Purdy. It's kind of a small sample, so I'm not going to be convinced yet. Okay, that's fine. You want to do that once, twice, 5 times, 7 times? This guy's going to go ahead and amass 15 victories at the NFL level, and people will respond and go, pretty small sample. I'm not getting excited yet. Oh, but you have no problem turning on him after 1 game. 1. So if
the sample's not small when he plays badly.
If you were small sample size Steve, if this was one of your takes, if you're the I need to see more guy, well, just know that Brock's got to do that 14 more times before you're allowed to make that point, because all of his wins were apparently too small of a sample, and now some of you are going to turn on him after 1 game. Don't be that person. It's a terrible, terrible take. He had a bad game. He threw a pick. These are all things we knew were coming. He lost a football game, in my opinion, in the first realistic way and time in his career. That's all. On to next week.
Well, here's the other part of it. He can't handle bad weather, and maybe his hands are too small. I haven't checked his hand size measurements, but
they're small.
He's got wet ball issues, and George Kittle is open down the seam, and he can't grip the ball, and so he throws a squirter, a quacker, and the very next play, he can't even hold on to the ball, and he tries to throw a pass, and it squirts out of his hand. So, and I'm only saying this partly in jest, but I also do think it's something to keep an eye on for future games where there might be a wet ball, because he looked damn uncomfortable in the second quarter when it started to rain.
Yeah, time will tell. Obviously, the 49ers do not play a ton of weather games throughout the year, but yeah, could you end up in one in January? Could you end up in one in December 3rd?
Or
Absolutely.
in November in Jacksonville, which is a little bit of a different. It can rain there any day, any time.
I mean, that's true here, too. If it rained in Jacksonville, we could get a rainy game here.
Sure. And I wonder what that looks like because he didn't look very comfortable. And I do want to make sure that my point permeates all of the frustration and the noise, and that is Cleveland ruined the game for you. And it wasn't Myles Garrett. It was Myles Garrett's teammates. And there was guys that I didn't even really know going into the game. And each play, it's a different Brown who was knifing through. The entire offensive line had a bad game. And it's because you played against a very, very good defense, a rested defense that was playing at home. And all the penalties aside, and there were a ton of them, and we can blame the refs for a few of them, but the Niners were sloppy.
No doubt.
And Trent Williams held, and they had false starts. George Kittle had a false start. They lined up offsides. Defensively, I thought they were pretty solid, but the offense they were out of sorts. After that opening drive that was off the script, they didn't do much of anything the rest of the whole game.
No doubt. This in the trench warfare battle, this was a win for the Cleveland Browns across the board, both sides of the ball. Manny in the city here with Willard and Dibs. Hi, Manny. Thanks for calling.
Right on, guys. Hey, I just want to point out a couple of things. Okay, I was feeling a little butthurt, just like what the guy said. Yes, they were battle tested, and they probably got a little bit of jet lag. But see, Brock Purdy, okay, if he cannot play comfortably in the rain, don't be throwing balls out there in the deep. Do screen passes. And also, the second, the rest, man, I don't know what side they got. They probably got paid under the table, but, man, that ball was already was that incomplete. It made them get that field advantage. Third, okay, we needed a kicker, a backup kicker. I mean, that guy is good too. Peterson was like, oh man, all
right, Manny, thanks.
Manny's got takes.
We're not getting a backup kicker. Nobody does backup kickers. Please stop with the backup kicker take.
I'm going to need to go to the pen. We're going to the backup.
What are we doing here? What do we need, a left-footed guy?
We're going to go to the lefty.
Okay, you can be all kinds of mad about so many things, and if the 49ers end up with a kicker problem, that's on the table. They'll make a switch and get a different kicker, and they can be ripped for that if it ends up going that way. But the idea of having two active kickers on game day, never been done before in the NFL, never going to happen ever in the future, not going to happen now.
Two-kicker system.
Not going to happen.
And the idea of the refs getting paid under the table. So you're dealing with 8 refs.
That's for sure.
So you're talking about 8 refs, and for a ref to sacrifice their career, how much would it take to get a cash payment? Because the white hat ref makes easy 6 figures, comfortable living. So
I don't know. What did Tim Donaghy make for a living?
This is not Tim Donaghy. And Tim Donaghy did not get cash payments under the table. He was betting on games.
Well, right.
It's a completely different story.
Totally. But I think
Manny is implying that these referees got cash under the table. And by the way, for all of you who want to hate on the referees, Cleveland was penalized more than the Niners were. Well, there 13 penalties. There were 25 accepted penalties in that game.
Yeah,
so
it was over-officiated
you
on
could
both
just
sides.
say that it was poorly officiated without trying to make it seem like it was slanted completely Cleveland's way, because it wasn't.
You can do it however you want.
Sure, you can.
But just throwing out the actual number of penalties does not tell enough of the story, in my opinion, because there were 2 plays. Look, there's always penalties, and this game had a lot of them. And the 49ers deserve blame for the majority of the flags that were thrown against them. There were 2 plays that were officials-related things among the what I would call 4 plays that would have changed the game. If any of them go the other way, 4 plays in the game, if any of them go the other way, the Niners win. If Brandon Ayuk catches the ball that Brock Purdy threw over the top, I think the 49ers win the game. Obviously, if Jake Moody makes the kick, I think the 49ers win the game. Not I think, I know. 49ers win the game. The other 2 were the fumble right before half, which I believe to be a fumble. And I also think the Deshaun Gibson personal foul, which I don't blame the ref for, as you know, on the field, because it happened so fast and very much at full speed, looked like a penalty. But if that were reviewable, they would have seen that it was not a penalty by the letter of the law. the Browns would have been facing 4th and 10 on the very next play with no momentum, and I hate their chances to actually convert there. So just the way it landed, in my opinion, those are 4 plays that if they go the other way, the Niners win.
Yeah, and I'll agree with a few of them. I don't like the fact that what Walker did is allowable as a forward pass, some underhanded chuck, but by the letter of the law, to use your phrase, the ball was still in his control in terms of he had a couple of fingers on it, and it's debatable.
I didn't see it that way, but yeah.
And it's ultimately up to the review, and they reviewed it, and they did not see enough to overturn it. And on the field, they immediately called it an incomplete pass. And I think that that's another one that the referee would have and should have let go because it's a change of possession and it gets automatically reviewed. But he immediately whistled it dead as incomplete, and then he threw the flag belatedly for intentional grounding, which is what it turned out to be. So I think that had he called it a fumble initially, it would have stood as a fumble. And the defenseless player call, that one's always going to get called when you see it in real time, when you see a player do that to a receiver and it's in the chest area. And you're right, letter of the law, it's not in the neck or the helmet, but it's close enough to where they're going to call that 9 times out of 10.
I don't blame him for throwing the flag because when I saw it at full speed, I'm like, oh crap, that's a flag.
Woo! That was a woo hit.
Yeah, but then we saw the replay and we're like, oh damn it shouldn't have been a flag. But it's not reviewable. What do you do? James in San Mateo. Hey James, you're on with Willard and Dibs. What's up?
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call. First of all, I'm coming off as a lifelong Seahawk fan.
Okay.
I think anybody who says the Niners are not the best team in the NFL and Purdy hasn't proved himself to be one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL is just a hater. I'm jealous. I wish Seattle had a team like that. I mean, I don't see them not winning the Super Bowl. But the main reason I called is, you keep talking about the tough schedule that Philly has coming up. Yeah. And I think they should because they went to the NFC Championship. So that made me think, and so I Googled, I don't even know the website, I Googled easiest schedule in the NFL, and it's Niners were at number 4. So how would the Niners, if that's true, and I'm sure it's different websites say different things, how can the Niners even be in the top 10 of easiest schedule after going to the NFC Championship?
Well, everybody who wins a division plays a first-place schedule, James. Now, what that states, though, is that there's a lot of this that is just simply in the cards, right? In terms of, what division are you matched up against? The Eagles are matched up against the AFC East, so that means they've got to play the Bills. They've got to play the Miami Dolphins. And then you sort of get one coin flip wild card AFC team outside of that other division. Both the Niners and the Eagles got first place clubs that they ended up playing, but the Eagles finishing better, they get the Chiefs, the Niners get the Jaguars. And then the rest of it is just your division. I would argue that from top to bottom, the Niners have, it's a decent division, but I think the AFC or the Eagles division is a little bit tougher. So that's kind of what leads to the way that the schedule falls. A lot of it is just kind of what's in the cards, Oh, okay. He hung up. So, yeah, they're both playing a first-place schedule. It just so works out that the Eagles, I think, are getting one that is a little bit tougher, and then even more so, it's not spread out. It's just all in a row. If you're not familiar with what the Eagles are about to do, Sunday Night Football next week, the Eagles will host the Miami Dolphins. It's going to be an amazing game. Right after that, they've got to go to Washington, which has always given them trouble in the last year, and then they host Dallas. Then they've got their bye, and then it's almost hilarious what happens the next 5 weeks.
It's a gauntlet.
It goes Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks. All 5 playoff teams, including road trips to your rival in the Dallas Cowboys, Seattle and the 12th man, and Arrowhead, always one of the hardest places to play.
It's a brutal schedule, and when you look at the strength of schedule, and I'm looking at Sharp Football, Warren Sharp, who does such a great job, he does have the Niners at 4th in terms of easiest schedule. The Eagles are sitting at 10th. It's actually the Saints and Falcons are numbers 1 and 2, followed by the Colts. And then the Raiders and Patriots have the toughest schedule according to, this is based on Vegas forecasted win totals, which is one way to look at it. The other piece of this, and it's something I mentioned to you before the year even started, the Niners have the worst rest disparity of any team in the NFL. Rest disparity means how much rest do you have versus how much rest your opponent has.
Okay.
Cleveland, for example, in this game had 8 days more of rest than the Niners did based on the fact that they're coming off their bye. The Niners are a minus 20, which is dead last in the NFL in terms of rest disparity. Their opponents will have 20 more days of rest than they will throughout the course of the year. So strength of schedule is one thing. Rest disparity is another one, to where the Niners have 2 other games coming up where they're a minus 7. So they're facing 2 opponents who are coming off a bye.
Interesting. Yeah, and then they've got their own tucked in there as well. But yeah, this one's a lot of travel going from Cleveland, Minnesota this week. They do get the extra day. And again, we're still waiting any sort of official word on Christian McCaffrey. Both Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams have been listed as day-to-day. Steve Kerr at 5 o'clock. We'll keep going on the phones with all of you after the 49er loss here on Willard and Dibs. Let's go to Butcher in Danville. Hey, Butcher, what's up?
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to preface, first and foremost, I'm a lifelong Steeler fan. And secondly, I'm a huge football fan. So knowing that, watching the game this last weekend, I was pulling for you guys to, take out the Browns there to help my team. Also, watching the first game with the Steelers versus the Niners, I saw how complete the Niners are, and I enjoy watching them just because I like to see the best football players play. And you guys have a whole team of all pros and players that I like to see. So for this last game, just to say, I mean, if you're going to take blame for why you lost the game, first and foremost, the kicker can't miss 2 kicks, especially in the clutch. So that's a bit of a concern. The thing about Brock Purdy, anyone blaming Brock Purdy, he had a tough game, but he brought you back to where you had a chance to win, and that's all you can ask him for. And I see your quarterback, and I wish my team had your quarterback, just like the Seahawks fan was stating. I mean, you guys are lucky to have this guy on your team right now for how much you pay him.
Butcher, I'm glad you said that, because I went on a Steelers podcast before the year, and they were telling me all about how Kenny Pickett was way better than Brock Purdy. Still feel that way?
No, I mean, look at the preseason. Kenny Pickett looked great, but seeing how he's reacting and how inaccurate he is at time when he's under pressure, Brock, I mean, Brock's just amazing, and I think you're lucky, and everyone's panicking a little. The season is a long season here. If you look back to 2019 when the Steelers went, I think it was 15-0, and people were thinking they were going to, challenge the Dolphins. Look what happened to them after they lost all those games and they exited the playoffs after 1 game. I mean, you have a long season, and you're lucky to have the team you have right now. You got to enjoy every single week and just, be happy and hope that McCaffrey is not seriously injured. Because, again, that was probably the second reason you guys lost this game, is injuries to Deebo and McCaffrey severely limited you guys, and the Browns could put man-to-man, and, you guys had a lot of problems.
No doubt, no doubt.
That, you still almost pulled the game off there.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Butcher, thanks so much. I mean, this is now 2 calls in a row from people who are fans of other teams, and I wonder if that sort of interests anyone with regard to what that perspective is. That's a Seahawks fan and a Steelers fan saying, I'm still sitting here jealous of everything that you 49er fans have.
Right.
Does yesterday knock you off in any way the idea that the 49ers are the best team in football?
No.
I do not hesitate one bit that I still think the 49ers are the best team in football.
I still think that they're in that conversation, and that's what I thought going into it. I didn't think that it was going to be a cakewalk, and you mentioned, I think I saw you on Twitter or X when you said, well, we can stop the 17-0 conversation now.
Yep.
Which is, it's kind of refreshing, because Nobody's going 17-0. And at the start of the year, I thought 13-4 would be their record. And when you look at the losses they might encounter, I don't know if I looked at this one and thought, well, that's a loss. But when you start to look at it now, when you reverse engineer it and you look at what yesterday was, it was a team coming off a bye. It was an undefeated team that was in a difficult road spot, 10 a.m. start for a West Coast team against a very, very good defense. And as the last caller just said, you lost your two biggest offensive weapons.
The crazy thing is, it had all the characteristics of your classic sort of sleepy trap
game. It's a letdown game, yeah.
Yeah. You're coming off what you did to the Cowboys. You're going on the road. It's a good defense. There's elements. You suffer injuries. All of the characteristics that you don't want to see, they all took place. And what did it lead to?
41 yards.
Lining up to win the game.
Totally.
And you just got to kick a ball 40 yards straight. And he sliced it a little bit. And there was a little bit of wind, and he missed. That's why I come out of this one with that as my phrase. Frustrated, not concerned.
Yeah.
I don't have any concerns right now about the 49ers, unless you want to say Christian McCaffrey's health.
Well,
that's it.
Do you still think that they should win, or that they still will win the division?
Yes.
Do you still think that they're going to get a home playoff game?
Yes.
Do you think that they still are going to be the number one seed?
Probably.
There you go. So, and I won't get to the Super Bowl or bust portion of my Q&A because that is still, you're still going to say, well, they should be in that conference championship weekend, and they should be the home team against Philly or Detroit or some upstart squad.
I've talked so much about Philly's schedule. The bigger threat to the one seed might be Detroit with the division that they're in. It really might be Detroit.
And the schedule they have,
Yeah, exactly.